the Greek myth. You bewilder me. Let us talk of someone else. Our host is a delightful topic. Years ago, he was christened Prince Charming. Ah, don't remind me of that, cried Dorian Gray. Our host is rather horrid this evening, answered the Duchess, coloring. I believe he thinks that Monmouth married me on purely scientific principles as the best specimen he could find of the modern butterfly. This connects back to the beetle comment earlier. Well, I hope he won't stick pins into you, Duchess, laughed Dorian. Oh, my maid does that already, Mr. Gray, when she is annoyed with me. And what does she get annoyed with you about, Duchess? For the most trivial things, Mr. Gray, I assure you. Usually because I come in at 10 minutes to 9 and tell her that I must be dressed by 8:30. How unreasonable of her. You should give her warning. I daren't, Mr. Gray. Why, she invents hats for me. You remember the one I wore at Lady Hillstone's garden party. You don't, but it's nice of you to pretend that you do. Well, she made it out of nothing. All good hats are made out of nothing. Like all good reputations, Gladys, interrupted Lord Henry. LOL, right? Like Lord Henry is making a comment that suits Dorian very well. I mean, I think Lord Henry's, some people have argued that Lord Henry may actually be Satan, that, like maybe it's not like a character. He's not just supposed to be a character. He seems to know a lot about things. Like he knows when to insert that Prince Charming comment in to get at Dorian, and now he's hinting that Dorian's reputation is like a hat made out of nothing. Interrupted Lord Henry. Every effect that one produces gives one an enemy. To be popular, one must be a mediocrity. Not with women, said the Duchess, shaking her head. And women rule the world. I assure you we can't bear mediocrities. We women, as someone says, love with our ears, just as you men love with your eyes, if you ever love at all. Again, we got superficiality, like the surface level. Men love with their eyes. They love the surface. They're interested in the physical, whereas women love with their ears. They love what's inside. They're romantic. So realism versus romantic here, but it's sort of gender-based. It seems to me that we never do anything else, murmured Dorian. Ah, then you never really loved Mr. Gray, answered the Duchess with mock sadness. My dear Gladys, cried Lord Henry, how can you say that? Romance lives by repetition, and repetition converts an appetite into an art. Besides, each time that one loves is the only time one has ever loved. Difference of object does not alter singleness of passion. It merely intensifies it. We can have in life but one great experience, at best, and the secret of life is to reproduce that experience as often as possible. Even when one has been wounded by it, Harry? Asked the Duchess after a pause. Especially when one has been wounded by it, answered Lord Henry. The Duchess turned and looked at Dorian Gray with a curious expression in her eyes. What do you say to that, Mr. Gray? She inquired. So we can read into this, I think, pretty clearly. She's interested in repeating an experience with Dorian Gray, even though it's hurt her. So clearly they had an affair, and Dorian, ended it, and now she's interested in doing it again. Dorian hesitated for a moment. Then he threw his head back and laughed. I always agree with Harry, Duchess. Even when he's wrong? Harry is never wrong, Duchess. And does his philosophy make you happy? I have never searched for happiness. Who wants happiness? I have searched for pleasure. Interesting distinction between happiness and pleasure. Obviously, Dorian's followed a philosophy of pleasure. Has it made him happy? And have you found it, Mr. Gray? Often, too often. The Duchess sighed. I am searching for peace, she said. And if I don't go dress, I shall have none this evening. Let me get you some orchids, Duchess, cried Dorian, starting to his feet and walking down the conservatory. You are flirting disgracefully with him, said Lord Henry to his cousin. You had better take care. He is very fascinating. If he were not, there would be no battle. Greek meets Greek, then? I am on the side of the Trojans. They fought for a woman, and they were defeated. There are worse things than capture, she answered. You gallop with a loose rein. Pace gives life, was the riposte. I shall write it in my diary tonight. What? That a burnt child loves the fire. So it's a metaphor for her going back to Dorian. He's the fire, passion, like that kind of a thing. And she's already been burned, but she's going back again. I am not even singed. My wings are untouched. Is that a reference back to the butterfly or to her being angelic? I don't know. You use them for everything except flight. Courage has passed from men to women. It is a new experience for us. You have a rival. Who? He laughed. Lady Narborough, he whispered. She perfectly adores him. You fill me with apprehension. The appeal to antiquity is fatal to us who are romantics. Romanticists. You have all the methods of science. Men have educated us, but not explained you. Describe us as a sex, was her challenge. Sphinxes without secrets. Ouch. That's pretty harsh. It goes back, it reminds me of the one when he said somebody was a peacock and everything but beauty. What is a sphinx if it doesn't have a secret? But I think the interesting implication here is that women are seen as sphinxes, these impossible to solve riddles. But Lord Henry says, and maybe Oscar Wilde says, that actually the real answer to the secret of women, why are women such a mystery, is that there is no mystery. There is no secret. We just think there is, and so obviously we can't find the answer to it if it isn't there in the first place. You know, I think maybe Oscar Wilde's onto something. She looked at him, smiling. How long Mr. Gray is? Note that she doesn't respond, so maybe that's the right answer. She said, let us go and help him. I have not yet told him the color of my frock. Ah, you must suit your frock to his flowers, Gladys. That would be a premature surrender. Romantic art begins with its climax. I must keep an opportunity for retreat, in the Parthian manner. They found safety in the desert. I could not do that. Pause, like footnote. The Parthians, if you're really interested in history and you want to understand the illusion, that's the Persians, essentially. The Parthians were this sort of nomadic horse people that lived in Persia. And famously, a Roman general named Crassus took his legions in to destroy the Parthians, but they surrounded him. They lured him into an attack in the middle of the desert, and they retreated every time he tried to attack them until his guys were starving and hot in their armor, and then they killed them all. So in the Parthian manner is to retreat only to attack again. And she says they found safety in the desert, which the Parthians did. I could not do that, implying that she can't handle abstinence. She can't have a life without affairs, without scandals, without things like that. Anyway, we're reading into it, but I think this is British. You've got to read into it. That's what the British do. Where was I? Women are not always allowed a choice, he answered. But hardly had he finished the sentence before from the far end of the conservatory came a stifled groan, followed by a dull sound of a heavy fall. Everybody started up. The Duchess stood motionless in horror. And with fear in his eyes, Lord Henry rushed through the flapping palms to find Dorian Gray lying face downward on the tiled floor in a death-like swoon. So Dorian fainted. He was carried at once into the blue drawing room and laid upon one of the sofas. After a short time he came to himself and looked round with a dazed expression. What has happened? He asked. Oh, I remember. Am I safe here, Harry? He began to tremble. My dear Dorian, answered Lord Henry, you merely fainted, that was all. You must have overtired yourself. You had better not come down to dinner. I will take your place. No, I will come down, he said, struggling to his feet. I would rather come down. I must not be alone. He went to his room and dressed. There was a wild recklessness of gaiety in his manner as he sat at the table, but now and then a thrill of terror ran through him when he remembered that, pressed against the window of the conservatory, like a white handkerchief, he had seen the face of James Vane watching him. So James Vane is there at the house, waiting for his chance to murder Dorian. The plot thickens. Sort of Dorian's judgment day. How is he going to handle this? We'll have to tune in next time to see. Hopefully you're enjoying the read. Any questions you have, again, shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer. I enjoy a good discussion. See ya.